Okay, let's unpack this. You came to us with a really interesting question about Arrowhead Pharmaceuticals and their drug AR-RAGE.
That's right.
Specifically looking at it from an investment angle, yeah. You're keen on partnership possibilities, upcoming catalysts.
Exactly. What's the story? What are the signals investors should be watching for based on the analyst reports and company info you sent over?
So that's what we'll deep dive into today. AR-RAGE, its development, the whole strategic picture around it.
Sounds good. Our mission basically is to dissect what's happening now and give you a clearer view of what might be coming next, especially regarding deals and key data points.
Great. So first things first, what is AR-RAGE, like fundamentally?
Okay, so ARO-RAGE is what's called an RNA interference therapeutic, RNAi for short.
RNAi.
Developed by Arrowhead. And think of RNAi as a way to selectively turn down or silence the production of a specific protein.
And in this case, the protein is?
It targets the receptor for advanced glycation end products, usually just called RAGE.
RAGE. Got it. And why to target RAGE? What's the disease link?
Well, the main target disease area is inflammatory lung diseases, primarily asthma.
Asthma.
See, the RAGE protein, it's known to be involved in inflammation processes in the body. So targeting it makes a lot of sense for something like asthma, where airway inflammation is, the central issue.
And Arrowhead has that special delivery tech, right? The TRiM platform. You mentioned pulmonary delivery.
Exactly. ARO-RAGE uses Arrowhead's own TRiM platform. It's specifically designed to get the RNAi therapeutic delivered directly into the lungs.
Ah, so it goes right where it's needed.
Precisely. Which is a big advantage for respiratory conditions, concentrating the effect at the site of the problem.
Okay, so it's RNAi, silencing the RAGE protein in the lungs using this TRiM delivery. Makes sense. What about results? How well has it worked so far? I think I saw some early data mentioned.
Yeah, they've done a trial. This was in healthy volunteers, mind you.
Right, healthy people first.
And the initial data they shared was actually quite encouraging. They looked at levels of soluble RAGE or SAS-RAGE.
S-RAGE, that's like a marker for RAGE activity.
Essentially, yes. It gives you an indication of how active that RAGE pathway is. And they saw significant reductions in spherage levels in the participants.
How significant are we talking?
Well, at the highest dose they tested, 92 milligrams, they reported a maximum reduction in serum S-RAGE of about 90%.
90%? Wow, okay, that's a big drop.
It really is substantial, yeah.
Was it just a quick dip, or did it last?
No, that's the other interesting part. The effects were sustained. They lasted for at least 6 weeks after the second dose was given.
6 weeks, huh? That suggests it could have some real staying power.
Potentially, yes. They also tested lower doses, 10 milligrams up to 44 milligrams. They saw what you'd expect, a dose-dependent response. S-RAGE reductions in the range of 31% to 59%. Even just a single dose showed noticeable drops.
Okay, that all sounds scientifically quite positive. Any red flags on safety in those early trials?
Importantly, no. The early data didn't raise any significant safety concerns in these healthy volunteers.
Good. But like you said, healthy volunteers are one thing.
Exactly. The crucial next step, the one everyone's waiting for, is moving into people who actually have asthma.
Right. Phase 2 trials in patients.
That's the one. This is where they really need to assess efficacy. Does it actually improve symptoms? Does it improve lung function in a clinical setting? And of course, further check the safety profile in this specific patient group.
And this is the data that potential partners are going to be looking very closely at, isn't it?
Absolutely. Positive results here showing it actually works effectively in asthma patients. That's the kind of data that really opens doors.
It's the key to attracting serious interest, those big potential partnerships you were asking about.
That's exactly right. Real-world effectiveness is what gets the big players interested and ready to talk deals.
So speaking of those big players, let's talk potential partners. If AR-RAGE keeps looking good, who might realistically be interested? Which big pharma companies?
Yeah, good question. You'd naturally look at companies with a strong existing presence in respiratory diseases, especially asthma.
Makes sense. Like who?
AstraZeneca jumps out immediately. Huge player. Think Symbicort, Fasenra, Tezspire, major asthma drug. Plus, they've dabbled in RNA therapeutics before, so the tech isn't completely new to them.
Okay, AZN. Logical fit, yeah. Their portfolio, RNA experience. Who else?
GlaxoSmithKline, GSK, another giant in the respiratory space. Advair, Trelegy, Nucala, You know the
Well,
names.
GSK's got a massive respiratory franchise.
And what's really interesting with GSK tying into ARO-RAGE specifically is they publicly said they're interested in inhaled drug delivery technologies.
Like the TRIM platform.
Exactly like the TRIM platform. That potential synergy makes them a very strong possibility, I think.
That really does line up nicely. Okay, AZ9, GSK, any others on the radar?
You should probably keep an eye on Sanofi, too. Their recent respiratory focus has maybe been more on biologics like Dupixent, but they're actively expanding in immunology and inflammation generally. A targeted RNAi drug like ARO-RAGE could be a really strategic fit, complementing what they already have, maybe broadening their reach.
Interesting angle. Diversifying their approach in inflammation. What about companies with maybe a more traditional, long-standing respiratory focus?
Boehringer Ingelheim definitely fits that description.
Yeah.
Very strong respiratory portfolio, Subirif, OHEV.
Right.
And importantly, they seem quite focused on precision medicine, exploring these novel anti-inflammatory pathways. ARO-RAGE, with its targeted mechanism, could really appeal to that strategic direction.
Okay, Boehringer Ingelheim. Targeted therapies? Good fit, potentially. One more, maybe.
Novartis is the other big one to consider. They also have RNA therapeutic experience and a significant respiratory portfolio, including Xolair for asthma.
So they know the tech and the disease area.
Exactly. Makes them another credible potential partner.
Okay, so that's a solid list. AstraZeneca, GSK, Sanofi, Boehringer Ingelheim, Novartis. Now, back to your point. What are they waiting for? What specific data is needed before one of them make a move on ARO-RAGE?
The number one thing is the full phase 2 data set from the asthma trials. That's going to give the clearest picture yet of efficacy in actual patients, safety, commercial potential, the whole package.
The big picture from phase 2.
Yes, but beyond just the overall results, there's a specific piece of that data that's become really critical. It's the data from the high fractional exhaled nitric oxide cohort, the High FeNO cohort.
High FeNO. Right. You noted this was originally expected, what, late 2024?
That was the initial expectation, yeah. And of course, long-term safety data is always going to be scrutinized too.
Okay, let's pause on high FeNO. For listeners who aren't familiar, what is FeNO and why is this high FeNO group so important?
Right. So phenofractional exhaled nitric oxide. It's basically a biomarker. You measure it in a patient's breath, and it tells you about the level of inflammation in their airways.
A marker for airway inflammation.
Exactly. High FeNO levels mean significant inflammation. And is particularly relevant for a specific type of asthma called eosinophilic asthma, which often tends to be more severe.
Okay, so it flags a potentially more severe inflammation-driven type of asthma.
Precisely. So if ARO-RAGE shows really strong results, specifically in this high FeNO group, well, that's a very strong signal. It suggests the drug could be effective for a really significant slice of the asthma patient population, maybe indicating a broader market potential.
Got it. So positive high FeNO results could really boost its perceived value. Which brings us back to the delay. You spotted this pattern of strategic delays with Arrowhead, and now it's early 2025. We still don't have this high FeNO data. Why the holdup?
Well, there could be several reasons. On the scientific side, maybe the data from this subgroup is just complex.
How so?
Maybe there are different responses within the high FeNO group itself. It might just require more time for really deep analysis, maybe more sophisticated stats to tease out the full meaning.
Okay, data complexity is one possibility.
Another could be discussions with regulators, like the FDA. If the data has implications for how future trials should be designed or the path to approval, those talks can take time.
Right, regulatory back and forth, those are kind of the standard explanations.
They are.
But your point about strategic timing, that feels very relevant for a company like Arrowhead, which often licenses its assets, right? Could this delay be more calculated?
It's certainly a strong possibility. Many biotechs, especially ones focused on partnerships, are very deliberate about when they release key data, particularly positive data.
So how would that work, holding it back strategically?
The thinking is they might hold back potentially strong high FeNO data to maximize their leverage when they're talking to potential partners.
Wait until negotiations are further along.
Exactly. Imagine being deep in discussions and then revealing, oh, by the way, look, these fantastic results in this key patient group. It strengthens their hand considerably, boosts the perceived value of ARO-RAGE right when it matters most in negotiations.
Like playing poker, holding on to your ace until the right moment.
Kind of, yeah. It's about controlling the narrative and maximizing the deal terms.
Are there other strategic reasons they might delay this specific data beyond just partnership leverage?
Sure. They might be aiming for a big splash at a major medical conference, releasing it there, generates maximum buzz in the medical community, catches more eyes, maybe attracts even more partner interest.
All right, maximize impact at a conference. What else?
They could be watching competitors, maybe waiting to see what others in the respiratory field announce before showing their own cards. Or it could even be simpler. Maybe they just needed more time to collect enough robust data. Perhaps enrollment in the High FeNO group took longer, or they need longer follow-up to really assess the durability of the effect.
That all makes sense. You want the story to be complete and compelling before you shout it from the rooftops, especially if it's crucial for deals. And you mentioned this isn't exactly new territory for Arrowhead, the strategic timing.
Not at all. You look back at, say, ARO-APC3 and ARO-NG3, the timing of their data releases seem to align very, very closely with when their licensing deals with Horizon Therapeutics were finalized.
Suggests it wasn't coincidence.
Strongly suggests deliberate timing, yeah. We saw something similar with ARO-HSD2 data released in stages at different conferences, not all at once. It seems to be part of their playbook.
A pattern, then. So while this strategy might be smart for Arrowhead maximizing deal value, maybe getting non-dilutive funding, what does it mean for investors waiting in the meantime? What are the downsides?
Uncertainty. That's the main thing for investors. Without the data, especially this key High FeNO data, there's just less clarity on ARO-RAGE's true potential.
And uncertainty also means?
Volatility in the stock price. Speculation fills the information vacuum. Some investors might get nervous, maybe sell shares because they don't know what's going on. That can put pressure on the price, even if the data, when it eventually comes out, is great.
So it's a balancing act for the company. Manage investor nerves while playing the long game for the best deal.
Exactly. Trying to maximize negotiating power without causing too much anxiety or frustration among their shareholders due to the delays.
Okay, so given this is likely a strategic play with the High FeNO data, and late 2024 came and went, when might we realistically expect to finally see it?
Well, now that the early 2025 conferences are behind us without this data reveal, you really have to start looking towards the major medical and biotech conferences scheduled for the middle to latter part of 2025.
Any specific ones to circle on the calendar?
The big one to watch in respiratory is the European Respiratory Society International Congress. ERS. That's usually in September.
ERS, September 2025.
Yeah, that's a huge global stage.
Yeah.
If they have positive phase 2 data, especially the High FeNO stuff, that would be a prime venue to present it.
Makes sense. Any others?
You could also look at the annual Congress on Pulmonology and Respiratory Medicine. That often happens later in the year. That's another possibility. Or if their focus is purely on potential partners at that point, maybe even a more business-focused event like a Biotech Pharma Summit sometime in 2025.
So bottom line for investors is keep a very close eye on those mid to late 2025 conference schedules, particularly in respiratory.
That's where the action is likely to be, yes.
Okay, let's try and summarize the key takeaways then for our listener who asked about ARO-RAGE right now. What are the crucial points?
All right. Point 1, ARO-RAGE showed early promise, reducing that ARO-RAGE marker significantly in healthy volunteers, and the initial safety profile looked good.
Okay, early promise.
Point 2, there's a clear list of potential big pharma partners, companies with serious clout in the respiratory space, who would logically be interested if the phase 2 data holds up.
Big potential partners are watching.
And point 3, the delay we're seeing in the release of that specific High FeNO subgroup data from the phase 2 asthma trial, it's very, very likely a strategic move by Arrowhead.
Probably not just technical difficulties.
Probably aimed squarely at strengthening their hand when negotiating licensing deals for ARO-RAGE.
Got it. And just to reiterate, what should our listener be focusing on, practically speaking, in the coming months?
Focus on those major respiratory medical conferences coming up in mid to late 2025. Monitor their agendas. That's the most likely place we'll see this High FeNO data finally surface, and potentially partnership news alongside or soon after.
Excellent. This has been a really insightful look at ARO-RAGE, digging into the science, the strategy, the market dynamics. Really helpful.
Glad to help unpack it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. Given Arrowhead's clear pattern of strategic data releases and knowing how fiercely competitive the respiratory drug market is, what other moves, maybe behind the scenes, might they be making right now that could significantly impact the long-term investment picture for Arrowhead? Something to keep mulling over as this story continues to unfold. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.